in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What draws behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hello, hello, hello. Greetings, one and all. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. My name is Ike. This is my channel, Ike Ogamian. And we got our co-host in the building, Dr. Thunder. How's it going, sir?
What's happening, man?
What is happening indeed? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the third and final, I believe. Maybe it'll be the final. Maybe there'll be one more, depending on how the list continues. Installment of this series on increasing, shall we say, improving, augmenting your creativity, accessing it, unleashing it. Okay? Unleashing it so that you can solve problems for which the solutions are not this prescribed, unleashing it so that you can synthesize things, take different solutions from different aspects and couple together something new, so you can think fundamentally about different aspects of problems and solutions so that you can do said synthesis, right? Now, we've went through 7 of them already. I'm not going to list all 7, okay? I'm going to put 4 categories in which they all will fit. Number 1 is the category of, well, you just got to get started, okay? You have to be a professional. You have to be a professional about it. You have to actually open up that word processor to that blank page, okay? And start putting pen to paper, if you will, with regard to that book that you're going to write. You got to sit in front of that keyboard if you got to compose something, keyboard being piano in this case. You have to actually sit down in front of that, or in that situation, in that circumstance, that with your tools ready to work. The other thing, which is also important, is research, right? You got to do the work. You got to immerse yourself in problems and solutions. How did these other people compose? How do these other people write? How do these other people solve the similar kinds of problems that I'm trying to solve? Okay, you got to study the greats and maybe the not so greats. Okay, this is the research aspect of it. Very important if you're going to do this synthesis thing. If you're going to go ahead and invent something that has not been invented before, it makes sense that you look at the realm of inventions, right? To spark something up. And then there is the aspect of not having distractions, right? Now, in this one, they said things such as, well, you have to have a certain kind of room. Maybe there's plants in there. And Dr. Thunder and I talked about, or Dr. Thunder brought up the speculation about the oxygen, right? The oxygen from the plants. They said, hey, you need to be alone. This is just another way of removing those external distractions, right? How about not having cell phones and things like that? So Dr. Thunder talked about having an egg timer, right? The good old egg timer. That is still in this particular category here. And shout out to the super chat. I think that is $2. These last $2. Shout out to Bernard Riley. JT. You want to give him a little sound effect, sir?
Sure. Yeah, I love this intro movie, he says.
Indeed, indeed. Well, thank you very much. So, the I've gone through three of the categories, okay? And I believe the fourth one has to do with your ability to remove your mind from predetermined grooves. So the example they gave was, and by they, I'm talking about this video that we're reviewing, that promises 15 ways. Okay. The example they gave was listening to different kinds of music. Okay. Listen to music in general. Okay. Because that's going to remove you from your regular day to day pattern of thinking, your 9 to 5, your make coffee, sip coffee, whatever it is, and put you in a different space, a different kind of mode of operating. That's if, for example, music is not what you're completely immersed in to begin with, right? And I think Dr. Thunder made that point quite effectively that hey, if you're already like a music person, music is not going to necessarily transport you very far off, okay? But the idea is to listen to different kinds of music so you can remove yourself from predetermined grooves. Our mind has these patterns that it's going into. And to the degree to which you're going to be creative in solving problems, in thinking fundamentally, in synthesizing information, then you're going to need to shake yourself loose of predetermined patterns, right? So, number one, research. Number two, get started. Number three, remove distractions. And then number four, shake your mind free of these predetermined patterns. We're going to move forward with the rest of it. Any kind of thoughts before we get into this, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah, I think the um, part of it has to do with your environment. One point I made was about how the space that you're in can have an influence. So music or other maybe atmospheric sounds, um, even stuff like the temperature in the room can have an impact on your ability to be creative. So, absolutely.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Let us continue. Number eight. Okay, number eight. Now, this is one that I think we might have some fun with. I already see it written there. What does it say? What do you see there, Dr. Thunder? At the bottom, it says number eight.
Yeah, there are no wrong ideas.
Sounds
Mm,
wrong already.
right.
It already sounds wrong. Okay, let's see though. Let's see if they're able to pull it off. I doubt it.
Right.
And no shade to these people. Whom are these people, by the way? They are. What does that say, Dr. Thunder? What's the name of this
Hey,
channel?
alux.com.
Airlocks.com. Okay. Now, no shade to them, but it's very mass media y, very watered down type talk. So I doubt they're gonna be able to pull some kind of strange Nietzsche-esque way of justifying this particular answer. Okay. But let's see. Oh, I think I did not have the audio there. So let's go ahead and click on that and let it do its buffering. I think this is the end of the last one, and we'll go from there.
And you'll give your
All right.
creativity time and space to shine. Number 8. There are no wrong ideas. Creative thought or expression is not like a mathematical sum. No one will ever come to the same answer. Don't be hard on yourself if the end product isn't what you were expecting. Ride the high in the freedom that there are no wrong answers. Plus, most creative successes are preceded by plenty of creative failures. The trial and error is what gets you to that big success at the end. Every step is a step forward when it comes to creativity. Remembering this will definitely encourage and boost your creativity. Number
All right, all this babying bullshit. Okay, like number one, it is again part of the first thing which they said in the research aspect, where they said, look, you're going to need to study many different people, and each of these different greats has solved different problems in different ways. You're going to need to immerse yourself in problems and the ways in which they're solved. Okay, so and to understand that Bach is different from Mozart, which is then different from Beethoven, who was introducing something new. Then we get into the Romantic era, blah blah blah. That is very well understood. Okay, So, two things I'm quibbling with, and I'll pass it over to you. Number one is my general quibble of, look, you're repeating yourself, okay? And then number two, the only reason you put that number 8 in there is to baby people. Is to say, hey, you're fine, I'm fine, you're fine, everyone's fine. Like, get the hell out of here. And then the only one true point that was made is something that we talked about in the professional aspect of things, which is you're going to need to write many crappy songs for the one good song to come out. You mentioned that you interviewed somebody that writes 100 things and they use 10 for their album, right? So
Yep.
all that notwithstanding, I cannot stand the babying and stuff. But go ahead, Dr. Thunder. What you have to say about this?
Yeah, it kind of is similar to this. There's no stupid questions. Kind of malarkey. I like the sort of amended version of that, altered version. There are no stupid questions, just stupid people. So, yeah, I don't like this, no judgment, all this kind of stuff. Like, you're supposed to judge. You're supposed to judge practically everything. This, this principle that people think is a Christian principle of not judging. Oh no, don't judge. No, it's actually not what Jesus said at all. Matter of fact, he said you judge a tree by its fruit. You judge a tree by its fruit. And so what that means is that you understand something about the tree, what it's supposed to, the kind of things it's supposed to generate. And when it generates things that are not what it's supposed to do, then that's a way that you evaluate the tree. The tree is useless. The tree is not a good tree. It's defective. It's producing rotten fruit. It's supposed to be producing apples, and it's producing pears for some reason. Whatever. I mean, you can make those, those evaluations. And the thing is what's the point in adopting different ways to be creative if there aren't ways that are actually more effective than others, right? And then how are you deciding how it's more effective? You're judging the end product. You're saying, hey, that was a stupid idea that I just had, and I need to figure out ways to improve the quality of my ideas. Right. So that's the whole reason why, you would make a video like this to encourage folks, is because actual, outcomes actually matter,
Got it. You're pointing to their inherent contradiction, and even within the paragraph that they gave about this, there are no wrong answers. They started out with it's not a mathematical equation. It's all okay. No one can say who's right or who's wrong. And then they ended with, hey, you're going to need to do a whole bunch of crap, right? How did you judge the crap from the non-crap then, if you just started out with this whole? And let me ask you this, and I think that this is something that perhaps, let's take this short stop here at this station about the self-esteemization of everything, right? Where it's like, okay, I came here to learn how to fetch water, and you're telling me, oh, you're okay. And if your bucket is empty, I'm like, dude, just tell me where the well is, or how to dig the well, how to make a borehole. It's like, oh no, but you're fine. Oh no, let's not judge you. Okay, that kind of crap. Okay, now you are a professor, okay? So you're probably steeped in the midst of this kind of idea insofar as it relates to, is it a pedagogical idea? What do you have to say about it? And go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if the idea is to, I'm trying to be generous.
Yeah,
If
B,
the
I want you
idea
to
is,
actually try to steel man the thing so that we have something other than a straw man to talk about, right? So there is something behind it to begin with. There is a need for people to understand that they can, quote unquote, right? So go ahead.
yeah. So I guess I would just say, um, I mean, I don't like the way that they put it, but I think that there is some value of just getting some stuff out, and because you have to produce some crap before you produce stuff that's good. And so if you are hyper criticizing your output right from the jump, then maybe that's going to make it harder for you to actually get to the good stuff. So if I'm generous with them, then I will say that that's likely what they're trying to get at. Um, I don't like all of the contradictions, and I think that we are adults and we need to learn how to um, be critical and be okay with being critical, being criticized and being okay with being criticized, and take it for what it's worth. Use things that will help us to help us improve. And then the other stuff, just don't take that stuff. Eat the meat and spit out the bone. If something is not for you, it's not for you. But you don't need to try to make it palatable for all. I think that's a mistake. I think by trying to spread something so thin that way, you risk uh, not being able to um, reach the folks you know that your materials, as it were, would have profoundly impacted. Now you don't reach them, and you don't really reach anyone else either. It's everything is like on the surface level.
And ladies and gentlemen, the link is over there. What we're doing is we're reviewing this video. So basically, if you think there is a point you have to make vis-a-vis the topic and vis-a-vis the specific item that we're covering on the topic, number 8 here being, hey, there are no wrong answers, hop in and we'll continue. Now, there is something that on this whole point of there are no wrong answers, it tends to diminish the arts more than any other thing. In other words, there is some creativity. Now, creativity is, as I said in the first part, this is not necessarily a series on creativity per se. It is how to solve problems. We have an end in mind because creativity and aesthetics, okay, we can get into it, massive philosophical tomes about what exactly it is, and I think it's a little bit more crazy, a little bit more woo. And by woo, I don't mean. Anyways, let me not get bogged down. But this is about solving problems. So there is some creativity, some cleverness, some synthesis required. Let's say in engineering, right? Now, coming around to the engineering department and saying there is no right answer, blah blah blah, it's fine, but no one's gonna accept it at the end of the day, right? You know what I mean? Like, no one's gonna be like, ah, yeah, the rocket exploded, but it was a nice idea, like it was a brilliant, it's not a wrong idea that you put bubble gum there. Actually, it was quite brilliant, It's like no, but the area where because there's a tangible result and a tangible end goal by which you can judge the, shall we say, work. But the area where it is difficult to say, hey, this is my tangible set of standards is in the pure arts, if you will. So this kind of talk of there's no right answer diminishes the value of the pure arts in the sense that people forget that creativity is about constraint more so than freedom, right? It's like uh, freedom, as you said, yeah, take a baby and let her just put fingerprints on the wall. Just take the thread and just kind of just roll it up into a ball and call it cloth, right? Take words and just throw it on a page. It's like, no, to write poetry or good prose, it is the constraint of the words and the sentences and the paragraphs and the rewriting of it. You're really, really
Look,
constraining yourself heavily, 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 heavily. Okay.
look,
And
look. If
this
you really
idea
want to
of
get me,
Go ahead.
If you really want to get me like
Yeah,
riled up and
I'm trying
irritated,
to rile you up.
if you want to get me irritated, that whole, kids are all creative and blah blah blah, and who are we to like squelch their, crush their creativity? We should just let them do whatever stuff. All that kind of stuff is total hogwash, because you have to give them a direction. You have to give them a structure and rules so that they can learn how to evaluate their own successes and failures, right? So just letting them go wild and crazy is just a stupid idea. Again, there's no stupid questions, just stupid people. The but the second thing that I really am irritated by is this thing to say that all children are geniuses. I don't know if you've heard this. This is a pretty common thing. I've heard preachers, pastors at churches frequently say stuff like, your kids are all geniuses, and kids are geniuses, and all this kind of crap, as though somehow miraculously, because you talk positively about them, they will increase in actual IQ points. I guess that's like a thing. I guess there's like you can bathe the atmosphere in positive, affirmation, and then it will actually equate to you increasing your IQ by, I don't know, 50 or 60 points. It's like, dude, if words are going to actually mean something, and if genius actually means something, then, when we use it to describe everything, it just loses its meaning. It just means that nobody's a genius if everybody's a genius. It's
So
just like, come
the
on, man.
two things that come to mind again, on top of this point, which is the reason why, and I don't think this kind of this is the impulse of the general public, I think. Okay. It is not going to stop. Now, you could change it in the sense that, okay, you could say, hey, we're going to be a stoic culture that focuses on outcomes and doesn't baby people, so on and so forth. Okay. And you could put the structures out there to guide people in that particular way. What I'm saying, though, is that people left to their own devices tend to go this way for two reasons. The first reason, to begin with, is, the reason that pastor is saying that is there's something about people, and not to judge this particular pastor, but something about him that will want to kick that baby in the face if they don't think they're a genius. You get what I'm saying? Like, these people judge very harshly. That's why they have to do all this. Oh, everything is great, because they don't have the ability to look at something and say, is not up to par, without hating the thing. Okay. This is the way normal people are. Okay. Everyday normal people. I think we were talking backstage the other day, and I told you that the normal population is like serial killers. It's just that they don't have the
Oh, right,
self-awareness to know it.
right. More,
Yeah.
like serial killers than maybe an actual serial killer, right?
Yeah, more like serial killers than the kind of person that they think is a serial killer.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
The person that they think is a serial killer is someone that talks like you, like, oh, how could you judge? And it's like, no, they are like serial killers. If they don't put a whole bunch of sugar on something, falseness on
Right.
something, fake sugar, they cannot stomach it. They have this kind of that's why they do it. There's no other. Okay, that's number one. That's the one reason why they do that. And then number two, for the people that are receiving the information, is they don't have to put it in colloquial terms, which you've said. Eat the meat, spit out the bones. Eat the meat, spit out the bones is a cognitive mechanism. Okay, right? Naturally, you put meat in your mouth and you spit out the bones. That's your mouth doing what it does, teeth, tongue, whatever. But there's a cognitive mechanism involved in taking in information, parsing it out, and all that. It may come naturally to you, or it's an easy second nature type thing to you. But don't by any means think that this is normal, right? It's not normal. Not everyone is a college professor, Dr. Thunder. Okay. So if you are a college professor, you by definition are away from, and you should not necessarily judge yourself the way that by the same means. So, two things, and I want you to react to them. Number one, I believe that these people judge very harshly. That's why they have to say things like, I'm okay, you okay. And in other words, they cannot point out to something and say, that is bad without necessarily then demonizing the person and wanting to. Look, these people have
Uh,
sacrificed people through time, right? They've burned people at the stake through time. They've crucified people through time. This is what they do, right? So, and
yeah.
then number two, they don't have the cognitive machinery to be able to just take in information and be like, okay, cool, you're criticizing this part of me. Maybe I even feel bad, but it is what it is. I take it, I improve. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a certain kind of person that will take issue with people using certain words. Like you know, don't say. I don't know. It's like don't say can't or don't say um, because those words maybe for them those words actually control their like they will start to believe if they hear themselves say they can't do something, they will start to believe that they can't do something. But
Hmm.
another kind of person that isn't really affected by words in that way, when they use that word in this other person's presence, they will feel an urge to tell them not to use that word. Or you should never say that. You shouldn't use that word. You know, but really what it is it's actually more of an indication of the person that doesn't want you to use that word than it is of the person that used the word, right?
Hmm.
um Now I understand why, for instance, for kids, why you would want to try to restrict their vocabulary.
Hmm.
Okay, and this is something that my dad in particular, but my parents did with me, was we had certain things we weren't allowed to say. We couldn't say can't, you know. We had this, this list of like principles.
Hmm.
One of the rules was, you know, that we never lie, that we always follow instructions of parents. Another one was like, we're tough and don't get hurt. I think one of them was that we're waterproof. Um, so you do that because you're trying to set up the kid for a certain way. But once you reach a certain point in your life, in a certain age, no longer do you really need. Hopefully, do you actually need others to create that sort of structure for you? Hopefully, that you don't need them to create that structure, and you have developed your own value system. And now, to your point about the judging thing, that's also it's the same. Of course, this is analogous. This is why I brought this other thing up. Um, don't judge, or you're so judgmental. You know, I've been called judgmental before, and the interesting thing is, by the person or the people that have called me judgmental, without seeming like I'm just trying to deflect, uh, it seemed to me that they were actually much more judgmental than I was. They didn't use the words that I used,
Hmm.
but the way that they actually behaved and the kinds of things that caused them to, you know, have, take issue and have issue, not just with something that somebody did, but the actual person.
Can you
You
empathize
know,
with them? Here's what I mean. I mean that to them, things are sticky.
yeah,
Okay, like you might be able to just go in there with a scalpel and separate, like dry pieces of brick, what I said over here and what the person is. It's the
yeah,
right pattern, but the wrong color. It's the but about you can you can go, you can zoom all the way in and then zoom out and then juggle the balls around. And I'm sure that you can empathize in the sense that we all understand what sticky is because we all have feelings, right? So we
Right.
know how the feelings then get stuck to this thing, and then you cannot separate these cognitive objects from each other. Okay. Now, can you see that this is how these people are actually operating? And
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't mean that you're going to excuse them, but you can at least, there is a part of you that sees that, right?
Yeah, I see it. And I recognize that, and I try to, as much as I can, um, not hyper criticize their inability to separate those things, because I realize that people tend to be that way. They're more that way than I am, for instance. And but then it also allows me to understand how someone would assume that I am particularly biased or unwilling to see another perspective if I discuss a topic with any kind of passion. Because if I have passion when I'm discussing this, then it must mean that I have an attachment to it. And then therefore I wouldn't be able to see another perspective. And the reason that they think that is that's how they are. And they are actually smart enough to understand, to have that level of self-awareness. But rather than maybe it operating as sort of a self-reflection sort of thing, it ends up getting what's the
Projection.
word? Yeah, it gets projected.
Yeah, projection is the rule of the day when it comes to human psychology. Shout out to Blind Guy, his wife, their life. Thank you very much for the super chat.
The
$20
big super
always.
chat, the big super
Yeah,
chat.
always heavy-handed, always on the sponsorship level, always showing out here for you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, since we took a deep dive into number 8 in terms of criticism of it, it behooves me to do some quick recap. Okay, this is part 3 of a series on creativity. Creativity is something that we know that we want vis-a-vis solving problems. Okay, want to come up with creative solutions for the kids' lunch, or creative solutions for how to grow our business, creative solutions for how to follow up with a client, creative solutions for, or maybe it's just a creative project itself. You have this book that you think that's in you, you want to write, songs you need to compose, YouTube channels for which you need content for. You're trying to come up with creative solutions, okay? And in the very first part, we said, hey, creativity has to do in this context with solving problems for which the solution is not prescribed. You need to be able to synthesize things. In other words, understand things at a fundamental level so that you can take from different aspects of your knowledge base, different aspects of concepts, and bring them together in something that is seemingly new, again, to solve a problem. Okay. And there are 4 big categories, and it still hasn't changed. It's still 4 big categories, because I think that this last thing that they said about no wrong solutions is just the whole thing about no wrong answers, is the whole thing about, well, research, and also partly the professional thing. Well, number one, you got to do research. Okay, you got to study the greats, you got to study the not so greats, you got to study your craft, you got to know what you're doing, you got to know what's out there already, so you don't reinvent the wheel, that kind of a thing, and so that it might spark something in you. Number 2, you got to start the work. You got to be a professional about it. You got to write those 100 songs and pick out 10, whatever it may be. Number 3, you need a certain kind of environment that does not allow external distractions. The room, the absence of people, the absence of cell phones, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay. And then number 4, you want to be able to shake yourself out of these predetermined grooves so that your mind is able to venture into somewhere new, listen to different kinds of music. Okay. Or just listen to music to begin with, to remove your mind from your regular daily patterns. Shout out to the $5 super chat.
I can read that for you if you like.
Go ahead.
This is from Snuggles668. Don't forget me. You got all these newcomers and you forgot all the old timers. I am hurt. I need you to play my music to apologize to me.
Yeah, this is not. I don't have your music. It's probably copywritten. You know what? Yeah, it's funny that Snuggles commercial that Bernard plays for Snuggles is they don't flag him for that, but I guess if you play a
Well,
commercial, they
it's
can't flag you, right?
yeah. Well, they can. It's based on how long the clip is. So if
I
so below a certain amount of time, there's no there's no violation. Yeah,
all right. Hi, I'm Snuggles, cuddly soft and really less expensive. Okay, does that work?
yeah. There you
Shout
go.
out to you, Snuggles. Okay, let's continue. Okay, we have looked at number 8. We're still in our 4 categories. Now we're gonna move on to number 9. Can let me see. What does number 9 say? Can you read that?
It starts to say so you have to play a little
Yeah,
bit because
we gotta
it
play a
hasn't
little.
revealed it.
Okay, and the internet is doing its thing. I'll go back a little bit. And once the circle stops, we shall continue. Okay. This is number 9. They promised us 15. Let me push play, see what happens. Nope, it's still doing its thing. I'm going to blame the struggle
Will
Wi Fi.
definitely encourage and boost your creativity.
All right.
Number 9, creativity is addictive. Creativity leads to creativity leads to creativity. You get the picture. If you need some inspiration to kickstart a creative session or just to sprinkle your everyday with creative flair, be sure that you're in close communion with creativity. That means creative people, places, spaces, ideas, energies, because the truth is, creativity is the catchiest thing on earth. Yep, even more catchier than COVID. When you're around creative energy or have a natural curiosity, you're going to be stuck with a creative edge 24/7, so be sure to feed your creative soul with inspiration. Number 10.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Thunder. I mean, I'm just we still have the same 4 categories. I don't know why people have to keep on repeating themselves. Okay, it's that cognitive lack of cognitive whatever that somehow they just thought that they said something new after you said research and after you said be professional. Then you're like, oh yeah, creativity. Surround yourself with. Anyways, go ahead. What do you have to say about this?
um. Yes, it's a lot of redundancy. Um, creativity is addictive. So, okay, so you kind of understand what they're saying. They kind of expounded it a little bit.
Hmm.
Maybe the title's not the best title for what they're actually saying.
Hmm.
Maybe lots of problems with the way that's framed, but okay, that's fine. Um, but I don't. Okay, so this is the way that I think about anything that is actually work. Okay. Now, is it possible to get lucky and come up with a really good idea, a really good solution? Of course it is, but that's not reliable, right? So that's why you have to systematize it. You need a way to come up with these sorts of ideas. You need and so then therefore also one thing that they said towards the end of that segment was feed yourself inspiration as if inspiration is something that you can manufacture, that you can always locate, um, that's always within your access. It is not. Okay. That's something that you cannot control. So you need a system that can generate these ideas if you feel inspired or not. Um, this idea that somehow you get the ball rolling and then there's this sort of mystical momentum that just keeps you moving. I, I've not found that to be true ever in any activity. I
Are you
think the
sure? Are you
power.
sure though?
Well, okay. So let me be clear about this. I think um, getting started on a project can be challenging, and I think once you get started, and then a lot of other components or aspects of the project will start to become you'll start to become more aware of them, and then you can solve each of those problems as you become aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
However, um, sort of there being a sort of momentum. I don't know. I don't really experience a momentum. Maybe I'll just say that I went to the
Mm-hmm.
gym today. I've had somewhat of uh, a hiatus from the gym because of some injuries um, and so I'm back at it. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find any momentum. There's no momentum. I could just stop now. I'm fine with stopping. And there's other things I
Mm-hmm.
could do. I could sit on the couch and eat Krispy Kreme donuts. That seems a lot more appealing to me. Um, so I guess I don't like this. I don't like the sort of teaching people to sort of expect there to be some sort of inspiration or some kind of easier path or some kind of, you know,
I see.
momentum that's going to help to carry them. Hey, just get started and then it gets easy.
Yeah, you know what? It's
No,
true.
it doesn't.
You see, I like that because you see, to expect it, to for people teaching people to expect it. I like your intuition there, what you're catching. You see, this is something that I use. Okay, this actual principle of starting something so that I can get move through my day, right? The
Yeah.
reason I make my bed immediately when I wake up is for that reason. But I don't, it's
Mhm.
not momentum. I agree with you. Okay. Sometimes I may even have like certain things that have nothing. Most of my productive tasks are brain type tasks. Okay. So I have certain other things to do to warm up the engine. Okay. I may even just start and be like, okay, I'm going to have those, maybe it's even coffee to make or whatever it is, just so that I'm moving. Okay. And then I'm going to move on and I'm going to continue. There was this general that was given a commencement speech. This was years and years ago that said this principle. The fact that you say it, in other words, this is the kind of thing that generals, with all their discipline and everything, tell the masses and they think that they told them something. It's like, dude, you're a general. When you make your bed, it's different from when these other people. It's like, it's very easy. Once I wake up, I make my bed, and then the next thing I know, I'm a general.
Right.
it's,
Right.
it's not gonna happen like that.
Right.
That's not actually what you're doing. Is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
It's
And and I can acknowledge that some folks do, they may, as they're doing things, start to get a sort of sense of, um, it- I think what actually maybe creates that illusion is the routine, right?
Mhm.
So when you get in a routine, it's not the routine that creates it's not magic, okay?
Mhm.
It's not like, oh, I've been doing this for 21 days and so now I have a, now it's easy. No, it's not that. It's that you have conditioned yourself in your instincts. You've conditioned your instincts to be looking for what the next thing is. It's like you've done sort of like a Pavlovian experiment on yourself,
Mhm.
conditioning what the response would be or what the
Mhm.
next thought would be. And to the extent that you have something that is within reach rather than something that you have to spend a lot of time figuring out what the next thing is going to be. You can actually be moving towards something rather than stopping and then kind of like, well, and then after a while you find yourself sitting on the couch eating Krispy Kreme donuts. And I don't know what the Krispy Kreme donut thing is today.
I think you need some fresh off the oven Krispy Kreme donuts, or fresh off the fryer, or whatever they do with those. But there's another aspect which I think someone gave a better word for. They're talking about this, shall we say, addictive nature, which it isn't. But then they talked about being around a particular space, and then someone said maybe contagious is what they're saying. Now, I think that that's a little bit of a contradiction based on what they said before, which is, hey, you need to be alone, right? And then, and creativity actually involves fundamental cognitive functions. Think deeply, in other words, and to be distracted by this swanky coffee shop in New Mexico with all the fancy whatever and the frills and, oh, aren't we all so creative? To me, is quite antithetical to the creative project. Now, all I see there is socialization and feeling like you're part of a community, which again is what the general masses tends to desire, want, and so on and so forth. What I'm doing here is asking you, what about this contagious, go get inspiration from these other people? All I see there is looking for a sense of belonging, feeling like you too belong. Because after you go there and you see all the fancy jewelry that was made by all the weirdo dreadlock chicks in New Mexico with their bare feet, then you too think, oh, I can do it too, right? That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's not
finding
really
your
that
tribe, as it were. No.
Finding your tribe. Is that what they're saying there? What do you have to say about this contagious get inspiration from people stuff?
Yeah, I suppose I can give it that. But to my point earlier, see, you cannot control inspiration. You don't have ready access to inspiration. You just don't. Matter of fact, you could go watch a movie like what's the new Spider-Man movie that came out. Buddy of mine that I train with, he was telling me about it today, and some of those amazing Spider-Man movies, I kind of, I'm still thinking of Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, and so that when the Amazing Spider-Man, when that started, and I was like, I think I watched the first movie, and I was like, well, I'll just wait. But apparently this last movie was really great. And it broke a lot of records and stuff. I think it's called No Way Home. So I could go to that movie, and one of the beautiful things about movies is that it's such an immersive experience, right? Because you've got the music, you've got all of this stuff that brings all of this stuff together. It's really quite a powerful combination of sensory manipulation. It's quite incredible. And so I could go to a movie and I hear the score because I'm a musician and I'm hearing all this stuff, and it could have one effect on me one day, a totally and completely different effect on me on another day. One person could leave that, feeling the same way that they did when they came there. Another person could feel totally, quote unquote inspired or whatever, right? So I'm saying that you might think that you can control the inspiration thing, but you can't actually control that. And you can try to put yourself in situations where it's more likely that you'll be inspired, and that's great. And I'm not crapping on inspiration. Yeah, inspiration is a real thing. It's great when I have it, but most of the time, and I'm talking 95% of the time, I still have to be productive regardless. Okay? I still have a deadline, And it doesn't matter, if I just sparked this, this next great idea or not, based on, my access to, so one of these weird dreadlock chicks with the whatever that you were mentioning. It doesn't matter if I can, if I can do that or not. So I just, that I really kind of, my ears really perk up when I hear folks implying that sort of thing, because I know what the process is. I understand it very well, and I know what doing it with a deadline is. You cannot sit around and wait for the muse to visit you in the middle of the night. You're going to have you truly will be a starving artist.
Yes, which is a noble thing, right?
Right.
Indeed, yeah. Systemize. Why am I? Systematization, as you put it. Okay, having a system versus just looking at a goal and waiting for the muse to take you there. And Audra Brown has a comment there and say, "Hey, maybe these people are just trying to keep the competition low. Like, if you don't want people to compete with you, Dr. Thunder, you just say, hey, you know what? Wait for the muse." Right? Like,
That's great.
just wait for, just let the muse, man. Meanwhile, you're out there grinding through your system. And shout out
Right.
to, shall we say, Sting is somebody that I mentioned last time that he has a system, okay? Because when he goes to write these songs for Disney movies, which he does, he writes a lot of songs for Disney movies. I don't really like a lot of his personal songs, but apparently he's a great songwriter. And I don't, I mean just regular like Disney movie songs. Okay, I'm not. Don't come for me, Dr. Thunder, or the rest of you music eggheads out there to tell me that those are not real. That's not a real song. Okay, but he can crank
Right.
out good, catchy tunes. Okay, that work at the Disney level. Okay, and he has a system. There's a documentary about him where he comes with this. He always travels with this piano guy that he brings in. They wake up, they start doing these routines, okay, and then after about 5 little songs, one comes out. He gets paid, okay, and he does it over and over and over again. When he gets called, he doesn't say, "Oh, I'm not feeling it." It's like, no, he comes with his piano guy. They do their routine. The song comes out. He gets paid. That's why he is who he is. Now, let me see here. Before we continue, we have a guest, Audra. Anything to add with what we have said thus far? And then we shall continue to the next number.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's like if you do require the muse's services, you gotta, you gotta look for them. You gotta learn to just stalk them, and eventually just wait in the weeds for 2 or 3 days in a ghillie suit, and then tie the muse up in your closet. That's why some people. I'm convinced that's why some people. That's why the muse is so elusive, right? It's like.
You
Muse
got to
isn't
be a
like
serial
wild
killer.
ranging. It just, you got to go trap
Right.
it, and then nobody else can find it for a while. So.
Okay, because all these people are trapping it in their closets. Okay, so we'll move on then to the next one, and we'll see what they have to say about it. Okay, da, 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 da. Ladies and gentlemen, fair use.
10. Creativity hits randomly. Just like a teen wolf transformation.
These people with their repetition, man. Anyways,
You can't always predict when creativity is going to hit. Don't trust the old organic memory bank to file away your great ideas. Rather, have an ideas book or a phone app that you can stash all your ideas, no matter how basic. Then go back and play around with them. Brainstorm and flesh them out a bit to see if you can make them into anything substantial. We recently made a video with some apps that could help you store your ideas. Here it is: 15 apps that force you to be more productive. Number 11. Be proactive
Okay.
when your mind.
Granted, it was a repetition, but at least there is something that we can feed upon there in terms of like, before there were cell phones, I used to carry this little voice recorder, MP3 digital thing with me, right? So back in the day when MP3 was all, ooh, it was this little MP3 voice recorder, and basically you could hum something into it. Okay. So and that's for the music side of things. Okay. And other than that, I'll have like a notepad that I can write things with, or I could just dictate an idea, for some random, maybe it's not music that I'm writing, but or lyrics, it's just some other stuff, right? So yes, it'll come randomly, and be ready to capture these things when they come. Let me start with you, Audra. I know you do some writing and painting or whatever else you do. You're in New Mexico, right?
Yep.
You're one of those people. Um, so what do
My
you have to say about
dreadlocks
this
are
thing?
still kind of short, but I'm working on it.
Okay. What do you have to say about this? What was just said here? Randomly, get ready to capture it. Any pointers you can give, and then we'll go to Dr. Thunder.
Well, the thing about ideas hitting randomly just occurred to me that it's like it can be a good idea to hit things randomly, but I think to say that ideas hit randomly is completely a complete misstatement, but just a common one. We'll go into that. But as far I do agree with the keep notes things. Like I sleep with I've learned to always have something around. I've nearly got 2 full up right here sitting next to me because I don't go anywhere without them. This is like where the one for like visual stuff, sketching out schematics and things, and then I have this one which is a little more writing based, or just random ideas. It's sort of so I definitely agree with that, because it doesn't matter how good and brilliant and like the idea is, or how sometimes I get the impression it's like, wow, that idea has really been percolating back there for a really long time, and this is quite the sort of gem that's at the end, and it doesn't matter how good it is, it goes away, at least in my brain. I do think some people, they don't go away quite that quickly, but yeah, it's but unfortunately the strange thing is that the memory of the fact that you did solve the problem does sometimes remain, and I go, oh man, I remember how I fixed that plot point in that novel I'm writing last night, but I have no memory of what it is if I didn't write it down.
Got it.
So I do agree with that, but that may
Dr.
be
Thunder.
The function of quantity may also matter with regards to that as well.
What do you mean functional quantity? You're just brimming with ideas.
I'm like when I went to get let's just put it this way, when I went to get diagnosed with ADHD, the diagnostician told me I should write a book about it before she knew I was an author. So I feel like I need to go find a leash for the creativity rather than unleash it, because I don't know how to get it back in the corral. So it's one thing follows from another, and so it's usually not a lack of ideas or inspiration or whatever. It's a loss of them, as they go by. Like I said, I know people who will have more clear-cut ideas and they can hold them in their head and work on them a lot longer. So, so I think how much you're dealing with that way, that's what I meant by quantity.
Dr. Thunder, randomness, capture. Any thoughts?
Let's go.
It's been a while. It's been a while. So, the last one implied that you need to basically work out associations so that you can more or less depend on inspiration. Then this one says that, but creativity is random. So what is it? Can you depend on it, on inspiration, or is it random? Now, I do agree with some of the ways that they suggested as far as documenting ideas that you get that are out of the blue. However, I don't care about your ideas. I care about the results. Ideas are cheap. Anybody can get an idea. It is the system that will bring forth the idea. So the system is the primary consideration. The system is the primary consideration.
Back to it, back to it, back to it. We have a goal, but only the system matters. And this is systems versus goal is one particular rubric that you can use, some kind of dichotomy that you can use to judge all kinds of things, whether it be an economic system, a political system, your way in which you're going to organize your life. There's always a goal that you have in mind, but you need a system because you have to live through time and things have to repeat and you have to work statistically, and so you have to have a system that more or less approximates the goal, right? Otherwise, you're living this kind of weird utopian dream and the system will not exactly get the goal. And to the degree to which it doesn't, it's not the point for you to start going, oh my God, this is a horrible country. Look at our judicial system. Well, compared to what? Right? Compared to Mexico? You want to get tried for murder in Mexico? Or that kind of a thing. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. Pardon. That was I'm over here by the airport. But let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what they have for us here. Oh, can you read that? It's already out. Number 11. What does it say, Dr. Thunder?
All right. It says, be proactive when your mind strays.
Okay, whatever. Let's see.
Mind strays. The internet is a great place to find inspiration, but you need to have a level of self-discipline when you're online. There's a fine line between searching for new ideas and wondering what that old high school classmate is doing right now and wasting 4 hours scrolling instead. Be realistic with yourself and disciplined. If you can't control the scroll, then no matter how much you want to look for ideas on Pinterest, it isn't going to be a productive space for your creativity to be inspired. Before you go online, write a list of what you're looking for. If you find yourself drifting from that task, then close the tabs and go back to the list. Don't worry, it'll get easier as you see the results of your creativity in action. Number 12. Creativity grows when supported. You don't have to stay in isolation forever. If you need to bounce some ideas off others or get some feedback, you shouldn't feel like you can't do this. Just be careful who you share with. As mentioned before, when starting out, creativity can be fragile and needs to be treated with respect and care, and you don't have to share at all if you don't feel ready. Explain to those that you're sharing with that you're looking for constructive feedback. They don't need to give you a clever critique or play devil's advocate. There'll be plenty of time for that later. It's a wonderful feeling, the excitement, the acknowledgement of people who can appreciate your creative work. But don't be disheartened if not everyone gets it. Not everyone is.
All right. After I wipe the throw up from my mouth.
I was gonna say I zoned out there. There were the words. No.
So
She's
we'll
not
ignore
very
number 11.
inspiring.
No.
Oh, right,
Number
right.
11 was just another. 11 was just another don't be an idiot stuff, which is okay,
I liked
cool.
I liked the sort of like capstone on 11, which was, do some work, figure yourself out, have a little, system. I think is kind of what you guys are using as the construct, and appreciate your creativity. You're like, no, that wasn't your creativity. That's getting you like you mislabeled there directly. Like it wasn't.
It was a list. Anyways,
Yeah, it's
and then they're back to this finding your tribe thing. And, go find people to share with, but make sure they don't criticize you too much. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just want to chop somebody's head off. But Dr. Thunder, what do you have to say about that number 12, because number 11 was just another, well, don't be distracted. We still have the same 4 categories, by the way. 4 things that they should have said, but they said they promised us 15. They've told us only 4. Go ahead.
Look, man, I'm not even going to comment on the last 2, but what I am
Okay.
going to say is, what is the difference? What is the difference between a creative solution and a solution?
Are you going to answer that?
No, I'm asking, what is the
Okay.
difference between a creative solution and a solution? See,
So, okay.
I understand what probably what people are going to say, that the creative solution is maybe an unusual approach, right? It's out of the box, right? It's an out of the box solution, right? One that's not limited to the usual methodology to solving that kind of problem. But I would argue that, well, you know what I would argue against that. But it seems to me that a solution is a solution. And if you label something a creative solution or just a solution, it still would require the same process to do with any sort of consistency. If you can do, if you have, if you're a problem solver and you have 10 problems a day to solve, I don't care if you call it a creative solution or if you just solve the problems. You would be using the same approach no matter what. So I just thought that was rather amusing.
Audra, any thoughts on what Dr. Thorne just said about creative solution versus just a solution? Because for me, it really is about the problem. But go ahead, Audra.
Yeah, I mean, it just occurred to me, it's like, if, speaking sort of generically, if you have a solution, then you don't need to create a new one. Is sort of, I would say that in practice, sometimes there is a problem and a solution exists but is not a full solution, and therefore that would be a time when I would might use the differentiation. It's like, all right, nobody else seems to be able to make this a full solution. Seems to be the problem seems to be, it isn't just a problem that is, worked at more and so forth. So you might differentiate it by saying you look for a creative solution, or just is shorthand. But I think sometimes that's if I was, because I've done a lot of troubleshooting, that sort of stuff. That's what I do best. But I would say, speaking practically, calling it a creative solution is not necessarily going to be the best thing. People like to call it a creative solution after the fact. They're like, ooh, check out what we did. Like, the credit takers are like, oh, it's a creative solution. And then if you're actually the person providing the solution and coming up with it, in a lot of cases, it's been my experience that probably trying to sell it to the problem haver that you're working for is as a creative solution is hit or miss depending on their attitude towards that. Because I think a lot of people look at that and they go, oh, you mean we're going to glue the head that Ike chopped off with hot glue and put a bow on it? It's like, don't know if that's a full solution, or,
I wouldn't
just make an art display out of it, right? Like, it's now artwork. We're gonna whatever.
I wouldn't be one of those customers that will buy the creative solution marketing ploy. I would be skeptical. I would be actually a little annoyed. I'll be in other words, let me appreciate the thing.
I'm the one that's supposed to call it creative. You're just supposed to be here to solve the problem.
Exactly. Just give me the solution and then let me appreciate it. Not come on, oh, this is a creative. I have to think outside the box for this one and say, whatever. Shout out to the reality of fitness. You want to give a sound effect?
Sure.
What does he have to say?
He says, "Salute to the powerful panel and the charismatic chat room. I just watched your amazing sax solo from 9/13/2013. Dr. Thunder, you possess true talent just like Mr. Ike's intriguing insights. Thank you very much."
Thank you. And how much is that? $15?
$10. Big money.
$10. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You guys have been very you guys are continuing to be very generous today. So let's see.
Absolutely.
Number 12. And we have skipped through the last two. We said, hey, no comment. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see what's going on. Let's see.
Custom built to share your vision or have the type of imagination it takes to create something. Give them grace and move on. Number 13. Get physical. In 1977, Steven Spielberg was working on his movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was stuck on the artistic texture of the film. He took a drive and parked his car with a view of LA and had an impulse to do a handstand on his car's roof. Suddenly, he had a breakthrough of answers to his questions. Many scientific studies have been inspired
Oh
by
my
this story
goodness.
and have all come up in agreement that a change in physical movement can jog your creativity. Between ideas or bursts of creative energy, take a physical break. Throw a ball, run up some stairs, or walk circles in your bedroom. Do whatever you need to do to keep those synapses firing in your brain while your body is occupied.
Okay, this is another one of those kinds of general type things. When I say general, I mean I'm referring to the thing I said earlier when a general came through and gave advice. When Steven Spielberg comes and said, "I did a handstand," you know, that just was something that happened. Okay, that's not what you. And that's number one. And then number two is this. This is the kind of thing as if you're self-aware. No one needs to tell you when you need to stand up and stretch, right? Because if you're cramping, right, and you need to hydrate, stretch, do whatever, so that you can continue to just work your system, you don't need somebody to put it on a list, right? I mean, and it's not necessarily directly tied to creativity. This is just being a freaking human being, right? You got to be you have a body, right? Or you are a body, regardless of depending on how you want to look at it. So why do I have to get all weird with? Look, it is true. I talk about the and in my productivity type stuff, I talk about position switching and task switching and location switching. In other words, sitting down at some point, writing with a piece of paper, just I'm done with it. Okay, I got to stand up and then start writing with bigger letters on a whiteboard. Okay, this is not something I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that kind of then unleashes my creativity. It's just common sense, man. It's like my eyes, my back, whatever that thing's going to get tired. I'm going to get tired of a screen and I got to switch to something else. This is not me unleashing my creativity. It's just me being self-aware that I am a freaking body. Dr. Thunder and then Audra, what do you have to say about Steven Spielberg's handstand unleashing loads of creativity?
So yeah, so I agree with what you just said, Ike. I mean, there's no magic in the change of position. The change of position was to basically create comfort. You start to get uncomfortable in the same position. What I don't like about this kind of stuff, highlighting that the person was doing a handstand on top of a car or whatever it was, is that people will automatically fixate on that. Okay, so now they're out in the middle of the night doing handstand on their car, and they're like, how come I haven't gotten the idea? Because they associate the productivity, they associate the quality of the idea, the outcome with some abstract, action that somebody took. I mean, it's not unlike, oh goodness, it's not unlike people that they read somebody's autobiography, and they find that this person had a particular pattern that they followed, maybe a certain ritual, did certain things in a certain order, and they start implementing that order. And if you talk to them, if you say, hey, um, that's, why did you start doing that? Well, such and such is, did that, and it's supposed to promote, you know, creativity or whatever. And said, well, that's cool, but you do know that it's not really that particular stuff that is doing that, right? Oh no, what are you saying? I mean, it's as if you get if you I people people can they confuse themselves, they take the wrong things, they focus on the wrong stuff, they implement the wrong stuff to them. They don't actually understand why this stuff is effective. So then they themselves wouldn't be able to create another solution, as it were, or another pattern that would be effective, because they don't even understand the one that they're doing and why it even works, why it is effective. And I don't know, maybe you can argue, well, why does it matter if they understand how it works if it's being effective? Yeah.
It's yeah, that last point you made about, arguing that it works. I think that it'll work better if you went a few layers down to the fundamentals,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's why, again, analogous to that is my whole point of saying that there's still only just four things in this list. Okay, we are in number 14 now, or we're about to start number 14, and there's still only four things in this list. So
Yeah.
somebody going to this list, not understanding that there are only four, trying to practice these 14 things, it's not going to be very effective. They're going to miss a lot. Okay. Rather, if they have the four boiled down, then they're going to be more, shall we say, precise, accurate, understand the particular categories, and maybe even now come up with new insights, and then they could tell other people whom are more like them. In other words, to use your analogy, maybe Steven Spielberg took a handstand and then now they're doing handstands. But if you're a different kind of person and you understand the fundamentals of what Steven Spielberg was doing, right? If you're a different type of person, maybe you're on a wheelchair, okay? You can tell other wheelchair people what fundamentally Steven Spielberg was doing there, and then it applies to the wheelchair people. If you're a certain kind, because we differ in personality and so on and so forth, right? And that's why I think that understanding the fundamentals, and then you can tell your tribe, your group of people, hey, this is what was being done. This is how it applies to us. We don't do handstands. We don't have to. So, Audra, any thoughts about what's going on here?
I want to say zero, just to be, contrary. But first thing is that it might actually require a creative solution to do a handstand if you're wheelchair bound on a car. So that one might be a little more worthwhile, just because it might take some imagination. The first thing that occurred to me was that, it's like, really, we're using Steven Spielberg standing on a car as our example. I'm like, what happened to Newton and the apple? That one at least makes sense. Like, that one at least conveys a narrative of like how the idea that is mythologically, discovered, gravity, like the apple falling, right? Like it does make narrative sense, right? It's just like Steven Spielberg stood upside down on a car and he came up with a great idea. Well, where there's not as much, it's very disconnected there, which I think is even more prone to lead to what, Dr. Thunder was describing. And that touched on something that I'm, is one of my perpetual nitpicks, is what I consider I consider that an understanding of what I would label strategy, and back to you were talking about, looking at it from a commander or general perspective, like that true creativity is required for that. There's
Explain yourself, Leroy, by the way.
of,
Continue, Audra, but Lee, explain yourself, because this is insane what you're saying. Go ahead, Audra.
Okay, yeah. You know, and there's examples of generals who learned and studied all of the things that, say, Napoleon did, and then they tried to apply them, but because they didn't understand the way for which they were created, they often failed, right? Like they were repeating, they had linked, I call them like linked sequences of tactics, right? It's sort of a meta tactic, but it's not strategy. They'll call it that though. And I feel like, you know, that's the same sort of thing where, you know, you were talking about people reading an autobiography and they're like, I'm going to follow this daily schedule, right? It's the same thing, just at a smaller scale. And then it occurred to me too that hilariously, because I love things that circle back around this, the whole structure of here's a list of X number of N things, you know, that is really just an even less connected sequence of you know, mislabeled quote unquote, that they'll call them strategies and things, but right, it's this, like this list is an example of very disconnected, you know, non-interwoven tactics, right? It's almost like an unordered list of tactics, again parading as something.
It doesn't help people think. It's not conveying the idea. Yeah, anyways, maybe it's just three of us here on the panel talking about. No. Let me not do that. It is what it is. It's bullshit when you have four things and then you extrapolate it to 15, and you make it seem like you're telling people 15 things when you've only
Right.
told them four things. And it's bullshit. It is not. This is not thinking, and it does not produce anything good. We have done things in our lives, and we have worked with people, and we know what productivity is. Okay, and we know the kinds of people that we can respect that produce results. This kind of shit does not. Okay, people who think that they're telling you 15 things when they've only told you four things, that's bullshit. In any room, boardroom, engineering room, coding room, it doesn't work. It's nonsense. Okay, so we are the ones that have to now do the work of, you know, boiling it down to the four. Not that they've said things. It's just disorganized, right? So
It's
and
very disorganized.
before
It's
we,
not unreasonable to state that you're going to say four different things, four different ways each. That's useful. That can be useful. But to
yeah,
again,
Or
presuming
just
that they're
expound.
different
It's
things.
here are the four categories, and then we're going to expound in each category, and we'll give you some different, you know, thoughts on, you know, things to consider.
That's a
Yeah.
solid didactic
yeah,
technique. But
100%,
I was going to say
100%.
this video is probably an example of, relating back to a couple of segments ago, of an example of what you do when you search the internet for ideas. You know, you Google it. You're like, "Hey Siri, search the internet for ideas," and this is what you come up with. You know.
Okay. We're gonna go through the last we're just gonna see what the last three have to say, and then we'll wrap it up. The thing about the routines that you mentioned, Dr. Thunder, is something that I always see either the gurus or, shall we say, people interviewing Elon Musk or whomever. Maybe not so much Elon Musk because he's been interviewed to death, and now, you know, people don't ask him stupid questions anymore. But they're always asking them, "What is your routine? What is your daily routine? Hey, Mr. Real Estate Billionaire, what's your daily routine? Hey, Mr. Whoever, what's your daily routine?" Right? And as though this was really gonna. Now there is a point to it, in the sense that if you can gather up, okay, in aggregate, see what all these people are doing, you can take
Right.
out. Okay, you can be like, "Hey, these guys actually get up early. Maybe there's something to
Yeah.
that."
Right. It's research. It's valuable because it would be research. It would be like, okay, I'm noticing that, you know, these 40 people that are world beaters, as it were, you know, have conquered the world. They have a few things in common that are similar, and they express them differently. Maybe they did them at different times in the day, you know. Maybe they had some sort of quirky nuances in approaches to dealing with whatever those items were, but all 40 of these guys were doing the same. You know, they were doing these three or four things. See, that would be valuable, right? But just listening to see what you know, who's the guy in the video that they were talking about again?
Steven Spielberg.
You're right, just to see because he's doing a handstand or whatever. I mean, that's just some abstract piece of information that is almost not useful at all. It's almost is more distracting and maybe could almost do more damage, than having, than figuring out why is it by actually conducting some interviews with other folks and then going back and saying, okay, I can see some similarities here. We can pull out some principles. Now let's focus on the principles and not on this weird, quirky, anomaly thing.
Indeed.
Folks do this with music all the time with musicians. They'll find some weird habit that some musician had, and they will emulate whatever that particular thing is. Of course, they don't get any of the results that the artist that they emulate got from that. And actually, that particular thing could have just been an abstraction and had nothing to do with any sort of results that they got. So, stuff like, oh goodness, being a, what's the word? Not eclectic. What's the word for just a weird,
Eccentric?
Well, yeah, eccentric. The whole, that whole thing, like that's an actual attribute that you would want to emulate to be able to produce a certain level of creativity. Like, oh, I found out that, Thelonious Monk was this eccentric and, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, I found out that, Miles, and I'm just making something up now. Oh, I found out that Miles didn't take showers for like 2 weeks at a time, and whatever. I mean, people will focus on stuff that has nothing to do. I mean, they will focus on the stuff that was this particular artist, despite that particular flaw, even. And they will try to mimic the flaw.
They'll pick the flaw. They'll pick the fact that he did this weird thing with his toe, forgetting the fact that it's because he had cancer in his toe. That's why he did that.
Oh, here I got a great example. Here, check it out. I got a great one for you. So there's a very, very influential saxophone player named David Sanborn. Okay, and David, he plays alto saxophone, and he is very much responsible for sort of changing the sort of approach to alto saxophone tone, especially in a pop context, in a gospel music context, in an R&B context. Pretty much the whole alto saxophone tone concept changed primarily due to the influence of David Sanborn. Okay. So David Sanborn, very influential guy. David Sanborn had polio when he was a kid. Okay. Because he had polio, he had to adopt this sort of unusual way of holding the saxophone, and his embouchure is kind of crooked and stuff. Okay. Now, Kenny G, everybody knows who Kenny G is, right? Kenny G, because he saw his hero, David Sanborn, with this really weird, embouchure, which was because David Sanborn had polio, he starts to play crooked, and to this day still plays crooked. He plays crooked because David Sanborn played crooked. David Sanborn played crooked because he had polio. Kenny G did not have polio. Okay, there you go.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Ladies and
One of my
gentlemen, let's
greatest
run through
fighting
the.
techniques I developed that is I'm one of the only people that does it. I did it because I was emulating my instructor who's has vision issues. So
There you go.
I didn't, but it ended up working. So sometimes that's not a bad tactic, but
Number 14, set yourself time frames. Creativity isn't like productivity, but realistically, we all need some sense of urgency to get things done. While you might not be able to set strict deadlines, you should give yourself some kind of time frame to work within. Like each month you'll complete a new painting, or by the end of the year you'll want to have carved a sculpture. Then allow yourself enough time in your schedule to actually get it done. You won't miraculously have the time to just be creative if you don't create the space for it today, this week, or this year. Number 15.
And number 15 is going to remain a mystery.
I was gonna say, you
Well,
said there
well,
was 15, so
It
that's my
says
favorite part so far is that hearing that it might be the last one.
know
well.
when to stop.
Yeah, right. Well, they know that they're just going to be repeating something, so maybe it's not.
I think that the deadline thing goes to the whole kind of a system thing, goes to the whole kind of professionalism thing. It's almost a new one in the sense that before they said start, that's I put that in the professionalism bucket, and now they're putting some more in there insofar as they're saying now have a deadline. Okay, so again, the four things still are you got to do that research, you got to study the greats, you got to understand the way these problems have been solved before, blah blah blah. Immerse yourself in the problems and the solutions. Immerse yourself in the reading of those books if you're, shall we say, a writer or whatever it may be, the studying of the saxophone players, the study of other pieces of engineering or architecture, right? And number two, you have to start. This is our professionalism bucket. You actually have to have a routine, have a way of going about doing it. Okay. The muse you cannot control, but if you show up, okay, this is the show up aspect. If you show up and you have a room dedicated to that, which goes to the next point of having the environment, you have a particular kind of environment which is free of distractions, both external and internal. They say, hey, you don't want to be out there mingling with people. Okay. You want to be alone because the quality of thought is always better alone. You can think deeply and more fundamentally alone. Now you can have one other person there to, and only to the extent to which that person is on the same wavelength. But the more there is, it becomes like this kind of quantum mechanical thing, or shall we say, what we know just starts to become more like a mob thing. I always say, hey, imagine yourself thinking alone and or thinking with somebody who is at the same wavelength with you on the table somewhere in the corner in a party. If all of a sudden five more people come to that table, is the quality of the thought, the depth of the thinking gonna increase? No, it's gonna get shallower by definition. That's just kind of how things are. Okay. And then there is the aspect of jiggering, removing yourself out of predetermined grooves and patterns. Okay. All the other things that they said about finding your tribe and being in a group and so on and so forth, that's just making you comfortable. Okay. And okay, I'm gonna lay off of that.
I'll pick it up
You all know
and
what
beat
I
it up
think
some more if you'd
about
like.
all that group ish. Okay, and I don't know why anybody needs to tell anybody else what makes them comfortable. If you like that coffee shop with the rest of your hippie friends, I don't. It's not helping your creativity. Okay, it makes you comfortable, but I don't need to BS you and tell you, oh, that's good for your creativity. It's like, no, it's just making you comfortable. It's just making you feel like part of some kind of a tribe of people whom are going to be like, oh, yeah, your book is great. Anyways, Audra and then Dr. Thunder, final thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to, I just want to completely counteract and say,
You muted?
saying that is almost antithetical, possibly is the opposite of useful. From my, and I, again, I've especially,
Or am I
and
the one
it's more
not hearing you?
obvious in the more sort of
Dr.
traditional
Thunder?
arts spectrum, right, where the judging is very subjective. by people, or it's expected to be. I would say it probably extrapolates out to more professional settings, is more traditionally professionally, I'm using quotes, settings as well. But I wouldn't tell people to find a tribe and get comfortable. I would tell them to learn how to get a thick skin and learn how to, ignore good advice. I think my favorite advice is that, if you really want to go, it's like sometimes you got to ignore really good advice. I tell people that. I'm like, that's really good advice, but I'm not going to take it. And with, having experience of getting my writing out there and stuff, it's generally positive, but there's always critics, and sometimes they are part of your tribe. Sometimes, and it's just, you've got, if being comfortable is too, if you're too sensitive to that, then it's going to be rough. It's just going to get rougher.
Yeah. Are you able to hear us again? Okay, great. This has been a good conversation. I don't have anything fundamentally against this particular video that we are reviewing that's personally against the video. I think actually it made a lot of good points. My criticism is just more about the usual approach that these kind of videos or presentations do, which is to behave in a way that or represent things as being a longer list than is actually necessary, because it sounds better to say 15 things rather than saying 4 things. Okay, so part of that is like a marketing thing. A part of it is some laziness associated with not adequately distilling the information. So say, for instance, if I do a brainstorming session and I figure out, hey, it looks like I have 15 things that I can list here. Well, the next step is, where's the redundancy? Can I reduce these things down? Because people are not going to remember 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The implicit reason for the video does not match the product that was actually given, is kind of fundamentally where it's like, yeah, there's some good in there, but it's the way it was done doesn't lead me to believe that either they were grossly incompetent, had no understanding of the material, and therefore any correct stuff is basically accidental, or actually conveying this information and helping people unleash their creativity was not the primary focus as a point.
Oh no, it definitely wasn't.
Right. Like it clearly wasn't, right? But that to me is like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? This YouTube channel, I can't remember, what is it? I can't even think of the name of the YouTube channel now, but it was like the name of a website. It had like 3.84 million subscribers or something. They understand how to manipulate the YouTube algorithm. And that's not a negative thing, by the way. That's a positive thing. But you have to know the difference between, what their agenda is as far as getting as many views as they can. And yeah, they did provide some good information, but saying 15 is probably better for the algorithm than saying 4. That's just, okay. So I'll give them that. There were some other things that I said that were critical, but it wasn't really, I appreciated the mission, the so-called mission of the video. And I think that if people are really interested in figuring some things out, then the video could be helpful somewhat. So I'll give it that. And it certainly made for a good discussion. Yeah, but
What's
I've
going
got a
on
number
here
of things
now
coming up.
is
Yeah, I
let me
got
say
a
this and then
number of
I'll
things
let you
coming up
close
real
out
quick.
with the
Oh,
plugs.
okay, go
What's
ahead.
going on here is something that we discussed during the video, which is that the ability to be able to use a scalpel and parse out very discrete criticisms of what you're saying is difficult for people whom have that sticky head to grasp, right? It's like you see something and you're like, okay, there's 1,000 tiles here. I'm going to focus on these 3 tiles. I can see these 3 tiles. I don't have to talk about the other 9,990 or whatever 97. I'm speaking of these three, and I can remove them, put them back in, rearrange them, do all that kind of stuff. This is not the kind of thing that people and the impulse for you to say, hey, I would like the overall thing and so on and so forth is because the general public cannot just stick with the 3 tiles you talk about. They think you're tarnishing the whole thing and this and that and the other, which is fine. It is what it is. But
Do you see
just
what
because
Leroy
I can
is
use a
writing?
scalpel doesn't mean that I have to go and commiserate and empathize with you chainsaw users out there. So
Yeah. Do you see these last few comments that Leroy has written? So he's written. Let's see here. Let's see here. I believe although you guys are smart and way smarter than I believe the video went over your heads. He said 15 tips of creativity, but you only understood 4.
oh yeah. I'm not going to engage Leroy on this. Let's not engage Leroy on it because I think it's like we're going to be repeating ourselves about
Great.
stuff. I think
Go back and
you
watch the
understand.
whole
I
video. I
understand.
think
Whatever.
you'll see
Yeah, I'm not.
you should understand
Well,
that. Actually,
what you're saying, I
watch all
think,
3 videos
Yeah, because
because
this
this
is
is the third.
3 videos, and me telling you that there are 4 categories. Number one, if I tell you that there's 4 categories and then the rest of the things fit into them, for you to think that then I understood 4 things, you're crazy. But anyways, go ahead and do your plugs, Dr. Thunder.
Yeah. So as I said, I'm on a bit of a break from interviews until the first of the year, but I've got some really big ones coming up. Melanie King. I also reached out to Shay Charday. So that'd be an interesting conversation. And some others. I've got a bunch of other things happening, a bunch of musicians and things, artists, and so that's on the docket. I've got a Thunder's Thoughts coming up this Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That'll be with Dr. Doug. Uh, uh, are we doing a? Do we have a? I don't think we have a case closed this Sunday, do we?
Is Sunday Christmas?
Oh yeah, that's
Was
right. Yeah, so no case closed on Sunday, but the next but we'll be back the week after that.
yeah.
It's we've got a lot of. I mean, this last show that we did that was a good show. You want to go and check that out. The invasion of the Pygmies and all. So check that out, and then of course we'll be back with Ike next Tuesday, getting ish done on what'll be we'll be covering a new topic, but Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come back and check us out. And if this video is the first video in this series that you watched, then you should go back and check out How to Unleash Your Creativity Part 1 and Part 2. I thought it was really good conversation throughout. And I finally got my, this is long overdue, but I finally got my autographed copy of the Book of Obsidian, which I'm going to be reading, and I plan to have Obsidian on for another interview, in conversations with Dr. Thunder. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, all of that good stuff. And it's good conversation, Ike, as usual. And my wife
Excellent,
said,
excellent, excellent.
my wife said to say that your daughter is beautiful.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we are gone.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.